The first episode of the second season of Loki was finally released, one in which the members of the TVA had to face a harsh reality, and Loki had to fight for his life to return to his original timeline. In this video, we will be talking about the most shocking moments of this first episode and what the finale means for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because we even had hints of Doctor Strange in this episode. So if you want to know everything that happened in the first episode of the second season of Loki, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Welcome to the Oasis Geek. This episode starts right where the previous season ended, after the death of He Who Remains, or rather the protective Kang. The timelines in the multiverse began to collapse. The story begins with Loki crossing between realities, because he finds himself in a time slipping. But why is this happening to him? Why is Loki jumping between the past and the future? The first thing we must understand is that the TVA is in a place outside of space-time, in its own dimension. But when Sylvie ended the life of the good Kang, the machine that kept the timelines in check began to collapse, but we'll talk about that later. What I theorize with Loki is that as Loki was in another different dimension with the He Who Remains, at the moment that multi-dimensional security was broken, Loki was very close to the place where this multi-dimensional fracture occurred, meaning when Kang died. As Loki was very close to him, he was affected, and Sylvie sent him through a portal. He ended up fragmenting between the past and the future. This is not the first time that something similar happens in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as we have seen characters who have been in this temporal or dimensional gap in the Ant-Man and Spider-Man movies. While Loki suffers his time slipping, the TVA is facing an existential crisis. Their gods have been destroyed, as it was discovered that these were robots, and now it has been revealed that He Who Remains had erased the memory of everyone in the TVA. Each of them had their own reality from which they were erased. Faced with the realization of what the protective Kang had done to them, many questioned whether to continue to control the timeline or stop their operations. First, it was determined that these timelines should no longer be pruned, but allowing them to continue to grow caused the filter that He Who Remains had created to keep them in control began to collapse. In the TVA, slippings began to occur because the machine that Kang the Protector used to control the timelines began to fail after his death. However, they discover this after Loki visits the Repair and Advancement Workshop, a place Morbius had visited 400 years ago. This is where we meet an eccentric mechanic who repairs the city's technological devices and develops a machine to cure Loki. Morbius had to leave the TVA dimension and approach the core of the machine that kept the realities in control, while Loki in the future had to reach the same place. Loki must also prune himself, that is to say, put an end to the reality from which he came, although this is not explained very well and leaves us a topic for a future video. Then, before Morbius tries to save Loki, Ouroboros warns them that when you fall into a black hole, things go spaghetti-like. This is a reference to Doctor Strange, when he traveled through the multiverse and his atoms were destroyed like spaghetti. Morbius must enter the suit of a multiverse astronaut, where he is warned that if the suit breaks, he will lose his life. But in the end, when Loki finds himself in the future, he begins to hear a phone ringing that takes him down a hallway where he sees Sylvie. It is thanks to meeting her that Loki takes the courage to prune himself and manages to return to his main reality. Meanwhile, the TVA begins to move personnel and weaponry because a threat is looming, a threat much bigger than Sylvie or Loki. This episode ends with an after-credits scene, where we see Sylvie in a McDonald's ordering food. You can see on her face that she still bears the marks of a fight, and she asks one of the workers of the establishment to give her something to eat. But she sees in the establishment several couples, and we see how Sylvie mentions that she wants to try everything, as if implying that she also wants to have a relationship. This first episode is filled with many references to previous films, but focuses on the effects of the death of He Who Remains. Now we know, it's not that it was simply his life that made it impossible for the multiverse to get out of control. but that there was a machine dedicated exclusively to filtering the sacred timeline. But many questions were left unanswered, as in some scenes we can see statues of the Kong, and we don't know if Kong the Conqueror will already have some kind of influence on the TVA. In the end of the first season, when Loki returns to the TVA, we can see the statues of Kong the Conqueror, and we thought it was an alternate reality, but it was actually the same reality in the past. Apparently at some point, He Who Remains had monuments in his honor, but then he created the robots to lie to everyone and have them protect the sacred timeline. That's why we see how Loki hits the wall and reveals what's behind it, some figures of that Kong. This means that the conquering Kong may not yet have reached the TVA, and that they are the ones who are heading to this place. Surely the failures in that multidimensional machine put the other Kang on alert, and now Loki will have to face them. I think the most shocking moment of this episode was when Loki managed to escape the multidimensional collapse and prepared us for what is to come in the future. Time travel, multidimensional wars, and cosmic entities are the perfect formula for Marvel and the future of the MCU. In this channel, we will be discussing in depth all the theories and news about Loki's series, and also the preview of episode number 2, so if you want to know more about everything that happened and what awaits us in this new stage of Marvel, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. You are on the Oasis Geek.